Hello, I'm Roger Wright, and welcome to another episode of Glory on Grandview, actually the Season 2 finale, and boy, we got a special show for you, and I have a special co-host with me today. Seated to my right is Xavier Russell. Xavier is one of our great students in the Four Cities Compact Media Program at Wadsworth High School. Yep. Xavier, welcome.
Yep, thank
Great
you.
to have you on Glory on Grandview.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We got a great guest today, don't we?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We've both been excited about this one. So for our season finale, we have Mark Steinkerchner with us. And Mark is a 1973 graduate of Copley High School. Mark, welcome to Glory on Grandview.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, it is Super Bowl week. And Xavier, it is very appropriate that we have with us an retired NFL referee.
Oh, yeah.
Mark, 27 years as a referee in the NFL. So some great stories, great show. So let me just give you a little rundown quick on Mark. He does have a Wadsworth connection. Although he wasn't a Wadsworth Grizzly in high school, he was a Copley Indian. But he did have a company in Wadsworth, American Pro Mold. Yep. And for years that was his other job besides his refereeing job, his real job. They're running his company, and he has since sold that. Of course, the Steinkerchner family, great family in Wadsworth. Love the Steinkerchners, all the ones that I've known over the years. But Mark spent 14 years refereeing in high school, in small college. He worked his way into the Mid-American Conference as a referee, and then he got the big call. He was set to go into the Big Ten. He got the big call to the NFL, and 27 years, including 13 divisional championships, 7 wild card games, 4 conference championships, 3 Pro Bowls, and 2 Super Bowls. So very impressive resume. So Mark, we're going to start you off here. What led you to become a referee, and how did you get started?
Well, I was playing up at University of Akron, and found out quickly that I really wasn't good enough to be on the field. So my dad had officiated in high school and college, and he would take us to games, the kids once in a while, and I saw how much fun they had, and it was like the third team out there. And you listen to them talk after the game, you're like surprised, like, oh yeah, there are other teams out there, because it's like your own personal test in front of the crowd every single Sunday. Are you going to get them right? Or are you going to get them wrong today? But so I decided to give it a try, and you start out with the Pee-wees and then work your way into high school and slowly work your way up.
And what did you enjoy most about your career?
Every Sunday is a lot of fun. Yeah. They say, oh, this is going to be a good game or that's a bad game, but those are really important games to those two teams, to those fans in that stadium. I enjoyed the travel, enjoyed the camaraderie of the crew. You become a family after 26 weekends together by the time you get through with clinics and training camps, preseason. That's kind of the part that I missed. And then that 3 hours on Sunday. Yeah. But the rest of the stuff I don't miss. Yeah. Especially the travel today and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark, we mentioned you were a good athlete yourself, and you're in the Copley Hall of Fame, which is really cool. And you played for Jim Dennison, correct? At the University of Akron. There was your football coach, and we know Coach Dennison's a Wadsworth guy. We're very proud to claim him as a Grizzly. But as you kind of got into it, as we mentioned, you were set. You were good. You must have been good early too, because you kind of worked your way up quick. The high school, and then the small college, and then into the MAC, and then you said you were getting ready to go into the Big Ten, but then you got the bigger call. So maybe talk a little bit about that, like what you learned early on, and maybe how you were able to rise up so quickly through the refereeing ranks.
Sure. Everyone starts out. You take a class, which Wadsworth is going to have a class starting next year here for students. And I think you get half a credit or something. I know Jackson, they already have classes down there to become an official. So you pass that, and then you can start working 2 years of high school JV games and middle school games, Pee-wees, and then you work your way into high school. I was fortunate enough to be able to work my way in with some good high school officials, some real veterans, that one of the guys left their crew, and so they kind of took me under their wing. And I mean, it's an acquired talent. You know, just because you're born with poor eyesight and no hearing doesn't mean you're going to be a great official. It's a good prerequisite, but so, you know, you just slowly work your way up, and you got to be willing to listen and study the rules, and yet have the common sense to know what you call and what you don't.
And then you told me, like, you're kind of evaluated then, and that's kind of how you rise up, right? When people say, "Hey, you did a good job," that, you know, you made some good calls, and both coaches kind of evaluate you, and then other referees evaluate you as well. So you must have got a lot of good grades early on, which is really neat.
Yeah.
And then, so take us through your first NFL game officiating.
You know, I don't remember a lot of the game, but my wife said, yeah, I was there and was on the field. You know, just really nervous. I do remember, though, like the national anthem before the game. And well, here's a picture of my name on the scoreboard up in Cleveland. This was the fourth game of my career. Okay. And it was Pittsburgh at Cleveland. So you couldn't have given me the Super Bowl that year and been a bigger game. You know, I've been used to watch on TV, you know, once in a while in the stands. So that was a great time. I think it was Bill Cowher's first year at Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, that was a very memorable game.
Yeah.
All right. Walk us through a season for an NFL. It's got to be busy. You had your job, your normal job, right?
Yeah.
And you're running your company, and then, you know, the weekend. So what does that look like for an NFL referee? Yeah,
most all officials have other jobs. Some of the guys, as more senior guys, maybe have retired from their jobs. You know, if you're a teacher, you get 35 years in and still be, you know, in your late 50s, so you can continue to work on the field in football. But the season really, you have an off season between the end of the Super Bowl through about the end of April. And then you start studying the new rules that the competition committees come up with. The office starts sending out game film of just different things like, okay, we called these holding last year. This really wasn't enough. You know, we did call these holding that we want called. Things like that to start getting you ramped up a little bit. And then we'd have a week-long clinic in July. And then you start right into training camps. You'd go to training camp for a week. And now teams want guys, officials in more and more. So the officials are going to maybe 2 or 3 training camps, which is a great opportunity not only for us to get our eyes back, because you work by reflex. You don't have time to think over everything. So just like the players, we need a tune-up time also. Yeah. Plus the fact it's a non-competitive situation, so that you get to know the players and the coaches without the game day stress. So when something happens then during the game, rather than, you know, hey, 84, that call was terrible. You know, Mark, what in the world was that? So it's a more personal basis. But then you go into preseason, those 4 weeks, and then you go into the regular season, which is, you know, now 17 weeks, which is a lot of travel.
And a lot of time.
And a lot of time.
Now, you brought one of the things cool things you brought with you is one of your referee notebooks.
Yes.
And it's big. I mean, it is. You were saying you guys had some serious homework.
Right. So like
every year.
It is. The first third of it is just the rules, going over the rules themselves. And then the next third is what they call the case book. And that's more talking about play situations and actual philosophies of the rules. Because, you know, you hear this about holding, there should be holding every play. But not really, because we allow the offensive lineman to grab on to the front of the guy's jersey, the defender's jersey. But they can hang on as long as they don't get their feet beat. As long as I can keep my body between the defender and the quarterback or the runner, I can latch on. Yeah. But as soon as I start to get beat, I've got to let go.
Because those arms get
that's just too big. That's right. Once in a while you do this and then you throw their arms back.
Let them go. Yeah, that's interesting. And then you mentioned in your scrapbook, you brought a scrapbook, and you had an apology letter from a coach that got a little over exuberant on the sidelines with you, but you knew him, and and then he wrote hey, I'm sorry about that. You know.
Yeah, it's an emotional game. I mean, you know, it's not like a chess tournament or something. I mean, you know, people are keyed up out there to really do their best, and it's an emotional situation. So tempers flare, and you just have to get over it. I mean, it just. You know, when you put on those stripes, you're not a liked person. Yeah. I mean, I go back to when I was player, I never really liked the officials. They thought I fouled a lot. And and then I remember it was my maybe second year in the NFL. And down in the House of Pain in Houston, remember that? You wouldn't remember that, but
No.
we walk out of the tunnel, and there's this guy screaming, 84, you're the worst official that's ever worked in this league. We've been watching you for 20 years. You're terrible. It's like my second year. Come on now. I couldn't have made you that mad, but just because you got the stripes on, that's part of the deal.
Yeah. And then, obviously, you've met a lot of coaches throughout your career. What was probably like one of the most good coaches to work with, and like probably one of the worst?
I don't really have a worst. I enjoyed working the guys like Bill Cowher and Bruce Arians and those guys that were real screamers. I'll talk about that picture there in a minute. But I enjoyed working those guys just to see how I was going to do. Stay calm, explain what went on in the field, and then get back to the game. That picture there, that was in Pittsburgh, and the office had been on us about fast games not getting all the TV timeouts in. And so we had a real fast game. There's a lot of running, not much scoring. So we had to get another TV timeout at the very end of the game. The gentleman on the left is Dean Look, and he was a back judge. And all of a sudden, like less than a minute, he's back there blowing his whistle and calling timeout. He starts looking around on the ground. He says, "Hey, I lost my contact." So, we start going over, and so they go to the last TV timeout. Well, I go over to Bill Cowher. I says, "Bill," I says, "this is the deal." I says, "He didn't really lose."
Yeah.
And so that's what that is right there. He called Dean over. He says, "What the heck are you doing?"
Well, as we talked, Mark, you had a lot of funny stories, but I did love one with your family. You said your son was a Packers fan. He was a Brett Favre. So you were calling the game, and,
yes.
and the family went and tell the story.
What happened? We're up there in Green Bay, and it was in the first half. And Green Bay, Brett throws a long pass, like a 30-yard pass down like maybe the 5-yard line, pass interference. So it had been kind of an emotional game. We had a couple flare-ups. So next thing you know, I see him taking off, like really fast. I said, that's unusual. And so I kind of start jogging down, and he gets right in the two defenders' face. I got pass interference, and he does that throat slash thing. So I launched my flag out there, and he says, "Oh, what was that for?" And I said, "You can't do that."
Yeah.
And so then the game goes on, and Green Bay wins by a couple touchdowns. No big deal. So I get to the airport afterwards, and my wife and daughter and son are there, and my son's just sitting on the suitcase, and he's like, "Oh, like this." And I said, "Dan," I said, "it was an exciting game, and Green Bay won." He says, "Yeah, they did, Dad." But he says, "Why'd you have to throw that flag on Brett?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Even your family.
They do.
And then throughout your career, do you think you improved being as a referee?
Sure. You do. And you learn more and more the philosophy of the game. That's the written rules as far as what we talked about earlier, like holding. They describe, we can't do this. Well, you can in certain circumstances, and they talk about illegal contact on the defensive backs. We let them hand fight all day, but it's when you get that big advantage.
Yeah.
So after a while, you learn the philosophies. You also learn how to get yourself in position on the field to make the call. That's why you kind of get locked in your career, what position you're going to be at. I compare it to a baseball player. Very seldom does a guy become a catcher for 15 years and all of a sudden he's a left fielder.
Yeah.
This is kind of your part of the game. You're used to it. You know what to look for. Same with the officials.
And I should have mentioned that you were a line judge,
yes.
Correct? That was your
yes.
job. So we could get to see, we got some good pictures. We'll get to some good action shots. But, NFL referee, any referee faces pressure. But some of the games that 2 Super Bowls, they doesn't get any more pressure packed than that right there. The whole world is watching the game. What's that like? You study, you prepare, but just mentally, how do you deal with that pressure? Like you said, you're walking through the tunnel, people are yelling at you, you're terrible.
Right.
You think like in these high-stake games, if I blow a big call, man, everybody's going to see it, and they all know it's my call that I missed that. How do you deal with that?
You just have to have that confidence out there that you're going to get the call right. You want that big call at the end of the game to happen in front of you. And if you lose that little edge, which sometimes you do, all of a sudden 2-3 weeks in a row you've made a questionable call or an iffy call.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you start hesitate a little bit. You can't do that. It throws you off your game. So you just have to keep that confidence going that you're going to get them right today and not listen to the 80,000 fans. There was a funny story when I was down in Tampa Bay, and this was when replay wasn't around. And Tampa's going in to score, or the other team's going in to score, I'm sorry. And I think they were playing Minnesota. And the winner gets into the playoffs, the loser's out. So Minnesota goes in. They run the ball right up the middle. They're from like the 1 yard line, 2 yard line. And so we pinch in from the wings. At the end of the play, the runner's got the ball in the end zone. We go touchdown. And everything's fine. They do the extra point. Well, all of a sudden, I hear all these people starting to boo. I go, wonder what that's about. Mm-hmm. So then it gets louder, and all of a sudden on the big board, you see the guy's knee went down about the 2 yard line. So the ball should have probably been at the 1, but you got those 22 players in there, who knows?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we've got TV timeouts after the extra point, and there's a little group I hear behind me, 84 sucks. 84 sucks. I'm going, oh, geez. So now it starts to grow, and pretty soon it's growing more and more. I was, oh my gosh. So I just kind of turned around and tipped my hat and everybody starts to laugh or whatever. And it calmed it down. But all these people are in there, let's get back off of TV and get back to the game. Yeah. So we get away from this.
And then you ref 2 really good Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. Super Bowl 37, Tampa and Oakland, and Super Bowl 39, New England and Philadelphia. Tell us about those.
Those are a lot of fun. As I mentioned earlier, we can talk about this first, I guess, the picture here. That was in Sports Illustrated, and that's me behind looking at whether the guy gets his feet in or not. So once again, you got to be in good position. Ideally, I probably would have been right on straddling the sideline. But as you can see, players and everything are out there, and I knew we're in the team box area, so I'm going to step out a little bit so I still get a good view. But you focus in those games. You block everything else out. And you just keep working the game.
Yeah.
As far as individual things that I remember about the games, most of it is surrounding the game, not that actual 3 hours of the game itself. Like the one picture I gave you where we're walking down the hallway underneath the stadium an hour and a half before the game. 2 of us go to the home team, 2 to the visitors. And walking the other way is ex-President Clinton and Bush Sr. and his wife Barbara. And so as we get closer, George Bush Sr. says, can we have our picture taken with you? Oh, yeah, I think that'd be pretty good.
Was it backwards?
Backwards, exactly. Exactly. So he hands his camera to Barbara Bush and makes her take a picture of us. So that's the picture there. And then I tell my wife about this after the game, and she writes the Bushes, and he actually signed 2 pictures and sent them back to me.
Wow.
So that was the neat part. Things like that that surround the game that are really.
Yeah, how about like the night before the Super Bowl? Are you just is it like a player? You get butterflies, or you? Sure,
you get butterflies. Just even regular season games, you still get butterflies. When you quit getting those, it's time to quit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just the excitement of that personal test that I'm going to have that next day. If it's an average game in front of 80,000 fans and a few million on TV. Or a Super Bowl, you got how many millions on TV?
And now, Mark, I have to ask you too. I'm a Browns fan, and mm-hmm. I think you are as well. Mm-hmm. So how about that? Like when you're reffing a Browns game, that's your team. People always say, "Oh, it's a homer," he's helping the team. Or how do you separate from being a Browns fan?
Yeah, you just separate it because it's a personal test for each of us. We're getting graded every game. We want to do a good job. Personal pride. We want to do a good job. And so you just kind of forget that it's the Browns and the Steelers or whoever it is. You're just there working offense and defense every play. And, there's a lot of guys that live in cities that have teams. So they don't worry about, you can't work in that city.
Yeah. And then targeting is probably one of the, newest things that have been going on in the league. Is it hard to call with those?
It is. That's probably one of the harder calls just because it happens so quickly. Mm-hmm. And, you can't tell did the guy actually bury his head, the crown of his helmet, into his body, or was it more of a glancing blow and the biggest part of the blow was with the shoulder? You almost have to see it coming from a distance. You have to see that defender lining him up and at the last minute dip his head and drill him. Then it's a lot easier call. But,
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes you see that call being made from one of the officials that's further away, not when the play's right on top of me. If you're drilling him, it's hard because I'm watching, is he inbounds, out of bounds? Did he grab your face mask on the way in? What's happening? Do you knock the ball out of his hands? Where somebody from a distance, it's easier. They have that time gap to be able to see the whole play.
And when you're out of bounds, it doesn't matter if it's targeting or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Mark, one of the things too, going to what Xavier's saying. A few years ago, there was a horrible pass interference call. It was a playoff Saints game. Remember?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it was just blatant, right? And
Right.
and it blew the game, and it cost them the game, right?
Right.
What happens after that? Like to that referee, are you done? Is that you really
No.
blew that and you're fired, or what happens?
No, I mean, you recover from those. You hope never to have a one that's that blatant. And the other thing is you hope somebody else would have stepped in and seen the angle of it and been able to help him out. But no, I mean, we're only on a 1-year contract, so they can fire us at any point. But you have to make a series of bad calls, over more than just one or two games.
And then when was it time to hang up the reffing jersey and call it a night?
Well, I just kind of knew in that the travel was starting to get old, and I wasn't getting as excited packing my bag on Friday night to travel to the game on Saturday, and just physically being able to keep up with the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, some good pictures there of you, Roger Goodell. Showed the presidents there, a picture with the presidents as well.
Yeah, that was that picture there was in the Beacon Journal, Akron Beacon Journal, my first year. I was the youngest official at that point. That I spoke to my daughter's second grade class, so they made that for me to thank me for speaking to their class. And that's just an action shot, one of the games. I think you got a couple of action shots there.
Here's Emmett. Emmett wasn't too happy.
No,
there.
Emmett was a little upset. He was trying to get the ball in the end zone, and he reached the ball forward. Well, the ball never made it to the end zone when the kid knocked it out. And he thought he had gotten in, but he hadn't. And so he was expressing his displeasure.
There's Chucky.
Yeah, there's
Coach Gruden yelling at you.
And I loved working his games too because, I mean, he would yell, but then he's on to the next play. Once that's over with, he's going to the next thing.
Yeah, he'd let it go. It's Pete Carroll.
Yeah. And that's a nice thing. I enjoyed working the sidelines because I got to know the coaches and players better. That was just an action shot from Sports Illustrated. You get in those things in the background sometimes, and you just show up.
Yeah.
That's why you got to watch what you're doing on the field because you never know what's going to be on TV or in the newspaper the next day.
All right. Well, Mark, you mentioned that Wadsworth was looking at having a class, and that's great because we need referees.
We do.
I always think, who wants to do that? You guys are a special breed that enjoys that and wants to do it, but I'm glad we're cultivating that. And I heard Dr. Suber talking to you. He was trying to recruit you. He was trying to get you into.
I'll be back next year. I'll talk to the class.
You could be teaching that class, maybe Professor Steinkerchner.
Oh, there we go.
But what advice do you have for people that you obviously have some qualities that made you really, really good. You went to the highest level of that. So what qualities make for a good referee? Who enjoys that? I mean, it's fun hearing you talk because it's almost like you viewed it as a player. Like you said, I want the ball at the end. I want the call at the end. You like the excitement, and we met as a team of referees. But talk a little bit about that. Like what type of person loves this and who's good at it?
Well, in the process of getting hired by the NFL, they do background checks on you, and they also give you a half-day psychological test. And I always say, to go on then in the process, you had to have failed that test.
That's what I was going to say.
No rational person's going out there and do this job.
Right, if you fail, then you can be a referee.
You're in. But you just can't take it personally. You have to have enjoyed being on the field and the sport. and just realize you're going to make mistakes. And, you know, not everybody's going to agree with the pass interference call you had or the holding call you had, which, you know, sitting there in your TV in your living room watching a game with 3 or 4 or 5 buddies, how often do you all say, oh, yeah, that was enough for holding, or no, it was? You're always disagreeing. The announcers disagree, you know, was it enough for pass interference? So you just have to be willing to accept that you're going to miss some, but you still like the enjoyment of being on the field in that personal test. And the gratification of knowing, okay, we worked a good game today. You know, we made sure that the 2 teams had an equal opportunity to win the game within the rules.
All right, well, we have to wrap things up. Time went quick as we knew it would. But, Mark, thank you. I do want to apologize because I'm sure when you ref some Browns games, I probably maybe called you a bad name or
I'm
two.
sure.
So I'll write you an apology.
All right, if you would, thanks.
I feel bad because you're such a nice man and been so nice to have you on Glory on Grandview. You're wearing a Super Bowl ring.
Mm-hmm.
You brought a Super Bowl ring. And what neat memories, what a neat experience that you had. And we appreciate you sharing that with us on Glory on Grandview.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Good meeting you.
Yeah, good meeting you too. That's it.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.